biblical tales. God floods the earth, sparing Noah, his family, and 2 of every animal on board his ark.
Now, an international team of researchers have found new evidence that a famous formation in Turkey could be the site of the ancient vessel.
Researchers may have just brought one of history's most famous mysteries back into the spotlight, hidden deep within the mountains of Turkey. And what they uncovered left everyone amazed.
The book of Genesis says Noah landed here, in the mountains of Ararat. So, could this really be Noah's Ark?
For centuries, the story of Noah's Ark has been debated. Some have dismissed it as a legend, while others have held on to it as a sacred and historical truth. Now, a new discovery is stirring that debate all over again in a way few thought possible. Using advanced scanning technology, scientists detected a massive ship-like structure buried beneath layers of earth and rock. Its size and shape alone were enough to raise eyebrows. But that wasn't the most surprising part. What truly captured attention was the possibility that something may still be preserved inside. As scientists edged closer to answers, the site began capturing global attention, sitting right at the crossroads of ancient scripture, lost civilizations, and modern science. Now, we take a closer look at what researchers believe they found inside. A mountain where no ship should exist. Yet, something there is raising serious questions. The discovery of what could be the Ark quickly made headlines around the world. Reports of 3D scans revealing a boat-like structure that closely matches the biblical description of Noah's Ark sounded almost too unbelievable to be true. More like something from a late-night documentary than breaking news. But the evidence was hard to ignore. Using advanced tools like ground-penetrating radar, scientists uncovered a massive formation deep within the mountains of eastern Turkey, one that bears a striking resemblance to the shape of a ship. It wasn't just a rough ship-like outline either. The scans revealed parallel lines, sharp angles, and long, consistent structures, features that closely resemble the measurements described in ancient texts. Naturally, it raises a big question. Could this really be Noah's Ark? For generations, the idea of a massive ancient ship resting somewhere near Mount Ararat has lived in the space between legend and curiosity. Locals shared stories, and explorers spoke of unusual wooden beams and buried formations. But for most people, the Ark remained just that, a story. Something to imagine, not something you'd expect to actually see. That mindset began to shift when a group of modern researchers chose to take those long-standing rumors seriously. Instead of dismissing them as folklore, they approached them as clues worth investigating. The location they focused on is no easy place to explore. Mount Ararat is rugged, steep, and volcanic, part of the harsh landscape surrounding the more well-known Mount Ararat. It's remote, dry, and largely untouched, a place where if something had been hidden for thousands of years, it could easily remain unnoticed. Seen from above, thanks to aerial photographs taken decades ago, the landscape revealed something unusual. A long, smooth oval shape, not just roughly oval, but strikingly precise, almost like the outline of a massive ship that had somehow sunk into the earth and hardened over time. Local residents had been pointing it out for generations, even centuries, insisting the shape had always been there, long before modern interest began. Over time, this mysterious formation came to be known as the Durapaner site, a natural-look ridge stretching more than 500 feet in length, surprisingly close to the dimensions described in ancient accounts. It was enough to spark curiosity, though not quite enough for anyone to declare a definitive discovery. Still, the shape continued to draw attention, and eventually curiosity pushed researchers to take a closer look. When a modern research team finally arrived, they didn't come with basic tools like early explorers. Instead, they brought advanced equipment capable of seeing beneath the surface. It's also important to note that this wasn't the first time scientists had visited the Durapaner site. Earlier investigations had come and gone without clear answers, but now technology had caught up. Today's researchers are equipped with ground-penetrating radar, 3D subsurface imaging, and sophisticated tools that can analyze underground layers with remarkable clarity, almost as if they're reading a simple visual map. When the team first pointed their instruments at the site, they expected to see what you'd normally find underground: random layers of rock, uneven patterns, and natural chaos. After all, nature rarely organizes itself in neat, predictable ways. But what showed up on their screens was anything but random. They saw long, straight lines, sharp angles, and layered sections that looked almost like floors. There were even symmetrical compartment-like divisions. These aren't the kinds of patterns you typically associate with natural formations. In fact, nature almost never produces straight lines unless something very really unusual is going on. The more they studied it, the less accidental it seemed. Instead, it started to look designed. Even more surprising, the internal measurements of the structure closely matched descriptions of the Ark recorded thousands of years ago. Not perfectly identical, but close enough to make researchers pause and take the possibility more seriously. Then came the soil analysis. Samples taken from inside the formation were completely different from the surrounding all. They contained higher levels of organic material, traces of something that was once alive, similar to what you might expect from ancient wood that had long since decomposed. The mineral content was also unusual, and even the plants growing directly above the site looked slightly different compared to those nearby. It was almost as if the ground itself still carried the imprint of something ancient hidden beneath it. And that wasn't the end of it. Scattered around the area were several massive stone slabs, each with holes carved near the top. They resembled anchors or stabilizing structures. Some early explorers believed these stones might have been used to secure a large vessel against strong currents. Local residents, however, couldn't say who created them or when. What they did say was that the stones had always been there. For generations, families in the area have passed down stories about the site, keeping its mystery alive long before modern science arrived to investigate. There have long been stories passed down through the region. Tales of unusual objects appearing after storms, pieces of petrified wood discovered high in the mountains, and strange iron-like traces buried in the soil. None of these findings proved anything on their own, but together they created just enough mystery to keep people wondering. Over the years, some explorers claimed they had uncovered fragments of petrified wood, long flat pieces that looked strikingly similar to planks. Others spoke of metallic traces, suggesting that something might have once reinforced the structure. These claims were often debated and questioned, but they continued to spark interest every time a new team came to investigate. Eventually, even the Turkish government took notice. The area was designated as a protected national park, not because it had been confirmed as Noah's Ark, but because of its deep cultural and historical significance. Still, the most intriguing moment came when modern scientists decided to explore deeper than ever before. As scanning efforts continued, the team began drilling into key areas. They used specialized cameras designed to fit into narrow underground spaces. At first, they expected to see nothing more than darkness, just layers of dirt and rock. But what the cameras revealed quickly caught global attention. Inside the shadowy depths, there appeared to be a surprising level of order, repeating structural patterns, sharply defined spaces, and distinct separations that resembled rooms or compartments. It gave the impression that whatever lay beneath wasn't random at all, but something that may have been carefully constructed. Nothing had been proven yet, but there was enough evidence to suggest that something unusual lay beneath the surface. The scientists remained careful and measured in their approach, avoiding bold claims. They emphasized the need for more drilling, more scanning, and further testing before drawing any solid conclusions. Even so, the mystery kept growing. The formation didn't behave like typical rock. The soil didn't match what you'd expect from the surrounding, and the interior patterns didn't look like a random natural occurrence. Whatever was buried there seemed structured, something unexpected, something that didn't quite fit the usual explanations. Interestingly, the researchers who recently brought global attention back to the site weren't the first to believe the Ark had already been found. Long before modern technology, before advanced scans and national headlines, one man had already made that claim. His name was Ron Wyatt, and his story remains one of the most debated and controversial in the world of archaeology. If you imagine an ordinary person suddenly setting out to uncover the greatest mysteries of the Bible, you'd get someone very much like him. By profession, he wasn't an archaeologist, historian, or academic. He was a nurse anesthetist from Tennessee. Yet to many of his supporters, he became known as God's archaeologist, a man driven by deep curiosity and belief, traveling across deserts, mountains, and ancient sites for more than 20 years in search of answers. Wyatt's journey began with something simple, a single photograph published in Life magazine. It showed a strange boat-shaped outline resting in the mountains of eastern Turkey. Most people would glance at it and move on, but for Ron Wyatt, it sparked something he couldn't ignore. He kept thinking, what if that unusual shape was actually the remains of Noah's Ark? That question stayed with him and soon turned into a 22-year mission to find physical evidence connected to biblical history. To his supporters, Wyatt was like a real-life adventurer driven more by faith than fame. To skeptics, he was simply a determined dreamer chasing ideas that couldn't be proven. Either way, one thing was clear. He wasn't someone who gave up easily. Wyatt didn't just aim high. He went Allen. Over the years, he claimed to have discovered nearly 100 biblical artifacts, including the Ark of the Covenant, Noah's Ark, Goliath's sword, the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, and even what he believed to be the dried blood of Jesus. His claims thrilled his followers, but also drew strong criticism from the scientific and archaeological communities. To some, he was a bold explorer trying to uncover lost pieces of history. To others, he was stepping far beyond the limits of credible research. But regardless of opinion, Wyatt remained committed to his search. Part of what keeps this this mystery alive is that the story of a great flood isn't limited to just one tradition. Versions of a massive world-altering flood appear in nearly 200 cultures across the globe, from the Near East to the Americas, and even in distant Pacific island traditions. It's a story that shows up again and again across human history. The idea of destruction, survival, and renewal. While many scholars debate whether these flood accounts are symbolic or based on real events, Ron Wyatt believed he already had the answer. To him, the flood was real, and the evidence was still out there waiting to be found. In his view, this wasn't just a story. It was history with a physical foundation, and he was determined to find it. His focus became the boat-shaped structure in Turkey known as the Durapaner site. Starting in the late 1970s, Wyatt made repeated trips from the United States to Turkey, returning again and again as if he were chasing something he couldn't afford to miss. During his time at the site, Wyatt claimed to uncover a range of intriguing clues. He spoke of petrified wood that he believed matched ancient ship timbers, metal objects shaped like brackets that he thought were once fasteners, and rib-like rock formations that seemed to outline the frame of a massive vessel. He also pointed to geometric patterns beneath the surface, suggesting what he believed were the remains of a man-made structure. Nearby, he highlighted large standing stones, monoliths with carved holes as possible anchor stones used to stabilize a huge ship against powerful waters. To Wyatt, all the pieces seemed to fit together. The size aligned with biblical descriptions. The landscape supported his theory, and the surrounding artifacts appeared to tell a story connected to an ancient maritime past. After years of fieldwork, photographs, lectures, and small-scale excavations, he became convinced he had found what so many had been searching for. But not everyone agreed. Far from it. Many professional archaeologists and geologists strongly challenged his conclusions. They argued that the so-called ship shape was simply a natural rock formation created over time by erosion and geological processes. According to them, what looked like design was actually the result of fault lines and natural forces, not evidence of human construction. Critics didn't just question Ron Wyatt's conclusions. They argued that the so-called ship shape was simply a natural rock formation created over time by erosion and geological processes. According to them, what looked like design was actually the result of fault lines and natural forces, not evidence of human construction. Critics didn't just question Ron Wyatt's conclusions. They also challenged how he worked. He didn't have formal training in archaeology, and his methods didn't always follow the careful, controlled processes the field he attempted on. At times, he leaned on instinct where scientists expected clear, measurable evidence. Some critics argued he was interpreting natural patterns through the lens of biblical expectations. Others felt he was sincere, but simply mistaken. His supporters saw it very differently. They believed Wyatt wasn't rejected because his ideas were weak, but because they challenged long-held academic views. In their eyes, institutions weren't ready to accept discoveries that could disrupt both scientific thinking and religious understanding. Whether seen as a bold explorer or a controversial figure, Wyatt ignited a debate that still hasn't faded. And he certainly wasn't the first person to go searching for the Ark or the last. For centuries, travelers, pilots, soldiers, and explorers have shared stories about a massive structure hidden somewhere in these mountains. Some claimed to spot wooden beams beneath the snow. Others insisted they saw a ship-like outline from the air. Wyatt set out to prove those whispers were more than just stories. The search for the Ark has a long and unusual history. For thousands of years, it's been a mystery that sits somewhere between belief and legend, between ancient scripture and the possibility of something real. According to those ancient accounts, a man named Noah built a double-hull vessel, part lifeboat, part refuge for animals to survive a catastrophic flood. Whether people see that story as literal history or symbolic teaching, one question has always remained. If the Ark did exist, where did it end up? Was it buried beneath layers of mud, trapped in ice, or lost completely over time? Across generations, countless people, explorers, scholars, hikers, shepherds, soldiers, and curious dreamers have tried to find the answer. Their efforts have created a long, winding trail of near discoveries and unanswered questions stretching from ancient times to today. Even before modern tools like satellites and radar existed, early writers were already making bold claims. In the 1st century, the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus wrote confidently that the remains of the Ark could still be found in Armenia, in a mountainous region later associated with Mount Ararat. And he wasn't the only one to believe it. Early Christian writers, medieval scholars, and later Islamic geographers all shared a similar belief that the Ark was not just a story, but a real object resting somewhere high in the mountains. And these ideas didn't stay limited to one tradition. Flood stories appear all over the world, from Mesopotamia to India to Central America. The idea of a massive vessel preserving life wasn't unique to Hebrew texts. It became a shared theme across cultures. At the British Museum, even ancient records added to the mystery. Researchers uncovered a Babylonian tablet describing a huge circular boat, a massive kufa built with precise measurements. A modern replica of that design was later constructed in India, and it actually actually floated. This suggested that ancient civilizations weren't just telling flood stories. They may have been applying real engineering knowledge to them. Because of this, the idea of the Ark, whether as a real ship or a powerful symbol, began to draw people in. Religious traditions embraced it. Storytellers expanded on it, and explorers became determined to find it. Long before drones and advanced imaging, the search relied mostly on eyewitness accounts and word of mouth. Medieval travelers claimed they had seen old wooden beams high in the mountains, sometimes exposed after landslides or during warmer seasons when the snow melted. Local shepherds spoke of dark shapes protruding from the ice and strange objects revealed by retreating glaciers. But were these truly remnants of the Ark or just natural formations playing tricks on the eye? At the time, no one had the tools to say for sure. By the time of World War I, the mystery gained even more attention. Soldiers and pilots stationed near the region reported seeing large, unusual shapes emerging from melting ice. Some described what looked like the outline of a massive ship. But with the chaos of war and the harsh mountain conditions, no one could stay long enough to investigate further. These early reports became like scattered clues, never fully proven, but never completely dismissed either, just enough to keep the mystery alive. Over time, Mount Ararat transformed from a simple geographic landmark into something almost legendary, towering, icy, and remote. It seemed like the perfect place for a ship of enormous size to remain hidden for centuries. By the early 1900s, more climbers began attempting to explore its slopes. Some returned with stories of dark, massive shapes trapped beneath layers of ancient ice, fueling the mystery even further. Some explorers claimed they discovered caves lined with what looked like ancient wooden beams. In 1876, James Bryce even returned from the region carrying a piece of worked timber. He said he found it far above the tree and at an adder where natural wood simply shouldn't exist. While he admitted there might be an ordinary explanation, he didn't press too hard to find one. By then, Mount Ararat had become the heart of what many called Ark fever, a place wrapped in mystery and belief. Then came the Cold War, bringing a completely different kind of investigation. This time, it wasn't explorers on foot, but satellites in orbit. Rumors began circulating that American intelligence images had captured a boat-shaped object frozen high on Ararat's slopes. Some tabloids even claimed the Central Intelligence Agency had proof, but was keeping it secret. That idea sparked a wave of excitement. Suddenly, the Ark wasn't just an ancient mystery. It was a possible Cold War secret. Movies, magazines, and religious groups all began speculating. But when scientists eventually examined the publicly available images, the mystery quickly faded. What looked like a ship was most likely a mix of shadows, rugged rock formations, and patterns created by glaciers. Mountains, especially when viewed from space, can easily create illusions. Even so, the attention kept the legend alive. In truth, Mount Ararat didn't necessarily need solid proof. It just needed the possibility. Then in 1959, a new discovery reignited the conversation. During an aerial mapping mission, Turkish Army Captain Ilan Durapanar noticed something unusual. On a slope far south of Ararat's icy peak, he spotted a smooth, elongated shape, symmetrical and strikingly similar to the outline of a ship. But unlike earlier sightings, this one wasn't trapped in ice. It appeared embedded in the Ararat itself. The images were released and spread quickly. People began asking, could this be it? Had the Ark been hiding not on the mountain's summit, but on a lower mud-covered slope miles away? Researchers visited the site in the 1960s, took measurements, and studied the terrain. Their conclusion was straightforward. It was a natural geological formation. According to them, layers of mud, lava, and water had shaped the land into something that only looked like a boat. Case closed, or at least that's what they thought. The site stayed quiet for years until new explorers returned in the 1970s and 80s. Ron Wyatt became its strongest supporter, claiming it was the remains of an ancient ship, sparking both global interest and heavy criticism. Over time, similar claims came and went. Photos surfaced, theories spread, and excitement rose, only to fade when experts found natural explanations. The pattern repeated for decades. What makes the Durapan site different today is simple. It's based on data, not just stories. Scans show structured patterns underground, and soil tests reveal unusual organic traces. It's not proof of Noah's Ark, but it is evidence that something unusual lies beneath. For the first time, the search is being driven by careful science, not speculation. And while it doesn't give a final answer, it may be the strongest lead.